And this is great. I want to add this to my personal site as
Yeah,
soon as
me too.
possible. I think that it's a great addition. But the thing that we sort of stumbled on last week was trying to get these time codes to deep link into the video. So we're using the sort of Paul Irish's light YouTube embed, and we showed that on the site. If you look in the dev tools here, let me make it bigger. I think we have, yeah, it's only about 125 kilobyte transferred. So not very much, considering that those full YouTube embeds are about 1.2 megabyte each. So this is all working great, but I think we wanted to pick it back up and try and get those deep links working, because I think it's important to, when you have a search result that comes back in your static search, I think it's a nice feature to be able to jump into the video where that text is being referenced. And it sort of completes the circle of video to text content and linking those two things together. So we're going to attempt this again. I played around with this a little bit more, so I know a little bit more about the YouTube iframe API ahead of time, so we're a little bit more prepared for that step today.
Nice. Thanks, Ricky.
Yeah,
for
Mike, do you have any questions? Or
Ricky just posted the link to the Paul Irish Light YouTube embed. Yeah, Ricky, thanks for adding that.
Yeah, that's great. So, all right, where do we start? I think the first thing we need to do is sort of dive into this YouTube embed and see what it's doing behind the scenes. And I have this sort of up on my editor here. We still have our terminal running. Let me hide that. And look at what this web component is doing sort of behind the scenes, so we can get access to the YouTube player API that we want to get access to. And so the end goal here is we're trying to get this YouTube iframe API player. We're trying to get access to this player instance that comes back from the YouTube iframe embed, so that we can call this seek_to method here in the documentation. Let's see if I can get to it somewhere. There it is. And then we can pass our sort of timestamps into this, and it will, jump to the correct section in the video. So if we look at the light YouTube embed source code, we can kind of see that there is a reference to add the iframe. So it's adding the correct iframe for the YouTube embed here. And if we go down to that method, we can see there's a check to make sure that it doesn't double init. And then this is sort of the magic piece that we need, because there is a section that adds the YouTube iframe API for us. So if we jump to that code, we can see this is what we need access to, this YT.player instance. And unfortunately, it is not being assigned anywhere in this component. So that was sort of I think the piece that we struggled with. I think the other sort of interesting thing about this is, so the iframe JavaScript API from YouTube is like this separate library that it loads. And I think you can see that being injected somewhere. It's right here. So the fetch the YT player API. So it's the separate JavaScript API or JavaScript file that it loads. And I think it's like 150 kilobytes. So it's not a great amount of JavaScript, but again, this is all lazy loaded when the player is initialized. So, or we're going to ensure that is the case as we're going through this example. So yes, we want to load this iframe API JavaScript, and we want access to the YT player instance. And additionally, that is only initialized as like a separate thing. So if you go back up to the constructor, or the connected callback that runs when this web component initializes, you can see there's a big old comment here. I don't know if we can read it all, but let me wrap. where it doesn't actually load that iframe API in all instances, which is, I think, just another problem that we're going to have. So what I've done ahead of time is I've forked this component. I've basically copied this JavaScript into a separate file and made the changes that I think will be necessary to facilitate the use case that we're going for here. We want access to that iframe API everywhere, not just for WebKit browsers, basically, not just for Safari browsers. You can see the stock component only loads that iframe API for WebKit browsers. And that's for autoplay reasons, which again, we don't really need autoplay in this instance because we're lazy loading that. And we don't want the video to play until we've sort of lazy loaded the iframe in. So there's a lot of things sort of going on with this this web component, which I think is I don't know, it's not doing exactly what we want it to do, no, but the web component it's only like 167 lines of code. So I was able to very quickly go through this and see how it was wired up and see how it worked sort of under the hood. And it was a very simple web component. So forking it was not a huge lift. It wasn't like I had to make a ton of changes. And I'll sort of go through the changes that I did need to make. So here's my instance of the fork. I basically just changed the source code. And the only changes that I made, I removed this sort of Safari check. So we don't need that. I went down to, I made one small change to this YT player iframe to assign it to an instance variable on the web component. So it returns that so we can have access to it later. And then the other change that I made is if we look at this, the original add iframe component, or sorry, method, you can see that it does that Safari check here and then loads the sort of that JavaScript, the iframe, YouTube iframe API JavaScript file only in those instances, but I want to load it every time. So every time this component initializes and is lazy loaded through either user interaction or they hit that button that we're going to create for this project to seek to our content, I want to load this every time. So you can see this is the add iframe component that we're using now. This is the only change. I removed that check, and now we're only using the YouTube API, the YouTube iframe API. That's so awkward to say every time, but the YouTube iframe API JavaScript method every time.
Yeah,
so it does add a little bit extra JavaScript, but that's what we're going to have to do to have access to those deeper seeking functionality that we want.
Yeah, I'm guessing Paul did that because this is trying to be the ultimate kind of optimization of embedding a YouTube. But I wonder if there's a version of this that could be PR'd back to him where it's like a config option, whether you want access to the iframe.
Yeah, I'm sure that, I mean, I don't think that he put like a ton of time into this component. I think it's just a small component that he sort of whipped up real quickly. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he would welcome a PR back to this to say, if there's an attribute on this this YouTube custom element, it will opt into this sort of iframe API mechanism and use that every time. And then you'd get sort of access to this as well, because it would really be only like maybe just like 3 lines of code changed to the original component to do that. And I think it would buy you a lot, because then you get full access to the entire YouTube API in JavaScript. So you can have full access to controlling your videos, which I think is great, because then you can make your own custom controls and everything.
Which is what we're about to do.
I think, and I think maybe the other use case that I think would be really cool is pausing the video automatically when it goes out of frame or when it goes out of the viewport. Yeah, that might be a cool web component that somebody could whip up. But anyway, let's not get sidetracked.
That's the thing with
we're
this
already
project. There's so many cool avenues we can go down, and that's
yeah,
what we're gonna do on stream.
yeah, and that's kind of the fun thing about just developing generally, right? It's that there's always more stuff that you can build, and it's always fun. Almost every it's fun every time if you know how it works and you know all the pieces, and it's not like this mysterious thing. I'm gonna just convert that white space to spaces, so it's not mixing tabs and spaces together. No, but the original was, so
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why my editor isn't respecting that.
What's your default for if you're just editing, let's say, like Markdown file in 11T? Because like I want to do tabs, but then front matter needs spaces, and I always like and kind of pulled towards spaces because of that.
Yeah, I think that just anything with front matter I'll probably leave as spaces. Just because the editor experience does not have options to sort of opt out of that preference for front matter. I wish that there was better editing there.
Yeah.
But I think that also I'm just trying to move away from YAML a little bit when I'm in my front matter projects if I have an option. And yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of different front matter types that you can use in 11D, and that's fully configurable too. You can add your own types if you want. So, I don't know. YAML is fine. I have no problem with it, but I think once you get into like super long, nested things, maybe there are other options that are good too.
Yeah, can get convoluted. Ricky's a 4-man, a 4-space tab. Oh no, just tabs forever. How many spaces are your tabs, Ricky? This is getting way off track.
I mean, a good tabs versus spaces discussion. I mean, I used to be a 4-space tab person. It's 4-space tab, but I'm a 2-space tab person.
Yeah, Ruby got me to 2-space.
Yeah, I think that was a change that I had to make, and I had to. I prefer it now, but yeah. Okay, so I think we sort of went over the problem space, and I went over the changes that I made in the fork, and so now I need to sort of go back and say we need to reference that fork directly in our file. So I've just changed that to be the fork embed. And the reason I can do that is because in the file system, this exists in this project in the public folder, public.js, light YouTube embed fork. And the original one was a pass-through copy file that was just, sort of pulled from node modules and then copied it right into that same JS folder. So in our output, those two files exist side by side. So very easy to change that, and let's go back and see what it looks like. Okay, so it functionally looks the same, which is great. We have our light YouTube component, and it still initializes. But importantly, I did remove the autoplay feature. So when you click through here, it doesn't autoplay the video. And that's, I guess, one other change that I made to this fork that I forgot to mention is that when we're calling this add iframe, I added an optional callback so that we can run our own custom code on the player instance. So I think in some cases, we probably don't even need this for the code we're going to write, but I think it's still handy. So yeah, you can see iframe, add iframe passes in a callback here. The callback passes in through the YouTube YT player iframe method, and then we call back that again when the player is initialized. And I think the original code had something like event.target, target.play video. So I can reinstate that just to maintain the same functionality.
Yes.
Okay, so I think next we want to wire up the the time codes to link to the videos directly. So we have the fork in place, and now we want to, I think, make a new component that will allow us to click these time codes and it will jump to the video. So to do that, let's make a new web component. And we'll do it in the same folder as our fork file. I'll call it YouTube Deep Link. And then we'll write the code for that. YouTube Deep Link extends, class HTML element. And then I've kind of been using this like static register method way of registering a custom element, just to sort of embed as much of the code inside of the custom element as possible. And we'll just call it YouTube Deep Link. We'll check for custom elements in the global this. You can use window if you want. And then we'll just do custom elements.define and then pass the tag name in. In some of my components, I've started to do like you can pass in your own registry. That isn't something that's going to be available yet, but I think eventually we'll be able to, just looking at some of the extended specifications that are coming in, you'll be able to say, you can pass in, create your own scoped registry, and then pass that in, but that functionality is not available yet. But yeah, I think it's good preparation to be ready for that later. I think those scoped registries is something that is being specificationed. I don't know what the proper verb is for that, but yeah. Okay, so we have our register here. We'll want to, I want to pass in the reference to this class, and then we can. Another reason I like to do this pattern for custom element registering is if folks want to assign their own, sort of rename the custom element that they want to use this with, then they can pass their own tag name in here, my custom tag name, and it will register a different one. If we want to take it further, you could do like something like this. And that would allow folks to even change the default tag name if they wanted to, and as a static reference.
Oh, interesting.
Before this even gets but you'd have to wait until that, or you'd have to, I don't know. There's this sort of trade-off between how much do you want to auto-register the component, which I almost always do, but yeah. Anyway, we're getting distracted, I think. The other thing we need to do is sort of wire up the connected callback so that we have access to, so we're going to wrap this custom element around this time code. So that we'll want the custom element to have access to the time code. And then we'll also, I think, want it to be a button to, allow the user to click on it. So there's a couple of different ways we could do this. We could put the button in the JavaScript that comes back inside of our sort of short code here. And let's just go ahead and change this to YouTube Deep Link. But I think that just for the purposes of progressive enhancement, it might be best to just create this element in JavaScript and inject it. Now, there's some sort of content layout shift considerations that go into creating elements in JavaScript like this. But just for demo purposes, I think that, we'll just do it this way. The other, we could embed it in the sort of light DOM here and make button here and use that. Let's just go ahead and do that. And we'll do the disabled attribute swap instead of injecting it with JavaScript. That way we don't get any content layout shift. That might come with injecting a JavaScript element with a custom JavaScript. So yeah, we'll make the button disabled. We'll reload this. You can see those time codes showing up here. And yeah, let's get access to the button. We can do this query selector. Just to communicate to the end user that the button has no functionality when JavaScript is not enabled.
I see. And then you enable it.
When I toggle JavaScript off here with this little quick JavaScript switcher extension in Chrome, then you can see how the behavior would be before JavaScript is loaded.
Got it.
Or if JavaScript failed. So yeah, we have access to the button. We will do remove attribute, disabled. I'm a double quotes man too. Just like don't use single quotes. I don't know.
I remember reading big write-ups about which one is more performant. Things you gotta.
Yeah, I think it used to be. Didn't it used to be a thing in PHP where single quotes would like interpolate or would not interpolate as PHP code, and double quotes would, or something?
Yeah. So there was a
reason for it at some point, but
a slight negligible performance increase.
Yeah, I think that's like old school PHP. That's not really a thing anymore, but yeah, I think that they've normalized that. But we're writing in JavaScript, so I don't know, just use whatever you want. Let's see, I got lost. Where am I? Oh, yeah, so we have access to the button. The other thing we want to do is go back here and reference this file, so we have access to it here.
Ricky said plus matching HTML. Yeah, that's a big problem in PHP where you're switching between PHP and HTML.
Yeah.
Yeah, single quotes might be better there.
Yeah. Yeah, whenever in JavaScript, whenever I'm dealing with HTML, I always just use the string literals. Yeah. And we'll just put modules on these. It's their custom elements. The reason you want to do modules on custom elements is it ensures that no matter where it is in your DOM hierarchy, that they will defer to the end, and your page will be ready for query selecting. I think if you sort of define these in the head without module, then if you're doing some query selecting inside of your components, it doesn't always have access to the child elements there. So you always want to put type module on custom element definitions. So yeah, where are we here? Where do our buttons go? Okay, I don't know why that reverted, but all right, yeah. So we can see that the custom element is working because these buttons are now clickable, not disabled any longer. Yeah, what's next? We have our button. We want the button to do something, so we'll add our own seek method. We'll add the timestamp here. And I think the timestamp that we want, or the offset, we'll call it offset, is just the text content inside of the element. And then we will add event listener, click. And then we'll call this seek method. We'll rename this to offset. All right, so the other thing we need to do, since these custom elements in the video are not associated with each other yet, we need to get access to the video. So let's go back to our configuration. We have in our shortcode, we have access to the video ID, so we'll add that as an attribute inside of our custom element here. So then over here, we can say video ID equals this get attribute video ID. Getting some feedback from you, Mike.
Oh. Yeah, there's something blowing outside. I'll turn my mic off.
Someone's doing their leaf blower. I love those early morning leaf blowers. All right, so let's see. I'm getting on tilt here. I want to go back and reset video ID. Oh, it's just video. Yeah, okay. Change that to video ID. All right, so now we are getting the video ID back instead of the component. So we need to somehow associate this with the target video. So we'll do a target. We want to query the whole document because the video is not going to be a child of our web component. And then we'll do, I think, like YouTube video ID equals, and we want to do something like this. Let's just do a local variable for that. Let's make sure that's working. All right, we're getting references to the video. That's great. All right, so you remember back in our fork, we had this add iframe component, or sorry, method, excuse me. And calling the add iframe method will sort of inject the YouTube iframe API JavaScript file and then create our iframe from that. So this is the method we want to call. And we'll do that in the seek method, or in the seek. So when we click this button, it will load the video. And it's asynchronous, and we can optionally add a callback. And we'll do passes in the target here. So we'll do target.play video. Oh. Async. All right, we don't need to log that out. So yeah, I think that when we click this button, it will add the iframe. We'll call this method. And then inside the callback, we don't want to play the video in there because we're playing the video now in our custom callback. Great. Let's try it out. Play video is not a function. Oh, I think it's event. Sorry. Let's try it again. It's playing. Look, incredible. Yeah, that's great.
Oh, it's us too.
So
in the preview.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, incredible. I could not have planned it any better. So yeah, I think the last remaining step here is to wire up the offset. So we have the offset as part of this. Let's do so we'll just divide that by 1,000. Maybe here we'll do that. 1,000, oops, 10%. And maybe we'll round it. Maybe we won't round it. Let's just do that. All right. we have our offset. It's now a number. We have it in seconds. And we need to seek to offset. The other thing here that's a little weird is that you need to allow seek ahead. And this parameter, it sort of allows whether or not you can jump ahead to content that hasn't been fetched from the server yet.
Oh, interesting.
So I think it's like a buffering thing. I don't know. It doesn't say what the default is.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna, maybe just set it to true, because that's what we want. True is probably the default, but I didn't test it. So yeah, let's try this out. All right, 0 worked. 4 seconds worked. 28 seconds worked. Hey,
now we're cooking.
It's working. Yeah, so the other thing that I want to wire up real quick here is, so we have our video ID. And you can kind of see the problem when we click this button. The video jumps, but the video isn't viewable anymore. So we'll maybe do a sticky video. Sticky video. Sticky video, position, sticky, top 0. Yeah, and now you can kind of see that it's position sticky, so it's always viewable. I think the other thing we want to do is, when the video is already playing, you can kind of see that it doesn't jump. It didn't jump to the other section. So we want to sort of say, we want to check to say whether or not this video has already been initialized. Maybe we can assign the player here, event.target. And then we can check for if the player exists. And we can seek to the offset directly instead of going through that other mechanism. So yeah, let's see if that works. Get it started. No, that didn't do it.
Do you need that? Oh, you didn't have an else there. I don't know if that's an issue.
I think that's fine. Let's just see what it's doing. Okay, that's fine. Oh, that player is still undefined. It's not assigning it correctly. Let's look for target.player. Yeah, there we go. So it's seeked to it, and if it's paused, then it didn't play, but I think that's fine. So now it jumps around.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that's great. So let's see, what else is there?
There's a interesting question, comment on our previous video from WooFab. He said, probably wouldn't work too easily with static search results from PageFind, but getting the thumbnail of the YouTube video at the timestamp of the search would be fun. I looked into it, and I don't think we have access to that, as cool as it would be. It could be awesome to hover over that line and you see yeah, you see an image of that point in the video.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. I don't know of any mechanism to get those sort of deep screenshots.
Other than
Even just the rudimentary screenshot API on YouTube is not great.
Yeah.
And that's just for the poster image.
Yeah. Like I feel like that gets into downloading the video, taking screenshots of all the different points, and yeah, it's probably a little bit outside of the scope of this.
Yeah, I mean, you could make a sort of embedded player component that loaded the video and seeked to that section without playing the video.
Yeah, just made it look like an image.
Yeah. And then, yeah, you could set pointer events on it or something so that people can interact with it, but I don't know. That's a little bit much, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I think just even getting we kind of showed last time that you can, we put that sort of poster image up top here, and we showed how that rendered in the PageFind search results, because PageFind looks for the first, I think, image in your main content. So yeah, we showed kind of how to put your poster image of your video into PageFind results, but I think that that's probably as far as we'll go in that in that avenue of exploration. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of it. I think the other thing that it would be good just for polish sake is to maybe have these buttons render a little bit better. So you can say jump to parse and it would sort of show you the rounded timestamp that you're jumping to. But I don't know.
Yeah, the rest is just kind of
we got it pretty much working.
Yeah, like style and polish, right?
Oh, that ruined my text content reference, but yeah. I'd have to put the offset as an attribute. I'm going to do it. Text content, I want get attribute.
Yeah, it feels like a better anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's all working. We did it. Success.
Woo!
What else do you want to build?
Yeah, Ricky, what should we
15 more minutes.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
We could even just brainstorm a couple of ideas for next time. I think that the ideas that, or maybe I'm really interested in trying to build like a static site generator from scratch using just like see what npm modules we can wire together. I think that one of the Astro devs, I don't remember what social network it is because all the social networks are just melting together at this point, but one of the Astro devs had posted a question about what it would be like to develop an incremental static site generator from scratch. So incremental builds is like a first party part of the content that you generate. And I mean, I've always sort of been obsessed with, if I were to rewrite Eleventy from scratch, like what would I put in it or what would I leave out? And that's a question I think that I've thought a lot about.
The idea of, I guess, a dependency tree that is like absolute core in the SSG and everything kind of runs off that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And just have like that just super reduced use case, and everything sort of builds off of that baseline core utility. Which I think is like kind of what Eleventy is going for. But just like a sort of what's the ultimate evolution of that, like taking that to as far to the extreme as I could.
Yeah.
I think is an interesting question.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me of stuff Liam's working on, like where you you understand every character on the page and how it all fits together, and you know if this character changes in this spot, it's going to impact all of these other bits of the page, and so those need to be re-rendered.
Yeah, that's great. That kind of reminds me of I don't know if you've used Glyphhanger. It's like this utility to do like web font optimizations, and I worked on it a few years back, and yeah, you can check it out on my GitHub, but it will like spider a page to find the characters that you've used on your like rendered website. And it like, I think checks for even like invisible DOM elements, they don't count. So if a DOM element is invisible, it doesn't render in your Puppeteer instance of Chrome, then it will not count those characters. And it sort of creates this like super reduced Unicode range that you can then feed into your web font.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's expensive to run it like that. I think most people just use it they just like feed in their own Unicode range and it spits out an optimized web font for you. But it does have like that super advanced, like Puppeteer rendered. We're going to find every character you use on your page to generate that Unicode range for you.
Is the reason for Puppeteer because you want to know any JavaScript impact on your Unicode character set as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think originally it was probably just for simplicity's sake, but the side benefit is that, yeah, it does work with JavaScript generated content too. Because I think as a web developer, you just want access to the same APIs that you have when you're doing normal web development. So
yeah,
if I had to say whether or not that was a core use case that I cared about for the tool, I would probably say no, but it does offer that.
Yeah. Wow. That's an optimization I'd never considered. But I mean, like just on the Cloud Cannon marketing site, like we optimize that so heavily, and you're getting down to trying to shave like bytes off certain things. The web fonts we didn't really think about in that context, but I don't know what kind of reduction you see with Glyphhanger, but like we don't use the majority of the Unicode set.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's some presets that you can use with it too. Like you can just tell it, give me the ASCII subset of this web font, and that's great too. And yeah, I mean, I think the other sort of very interesting piece of this that I think about that's still very like modern day relevant is sort of this static build versus dynamic, because you could never do that kind of optimization in a dynamic environment. It just wouldn't make sense. But for like a page that doesn't change very often, you can run heavier build time optimizations like this to get every single ounce out of your web performance as you can. And yeah, it sort of opens up new opportunities for better performance than you could with a dynamic site or a request time generated site.
Big time. Like I love the constraint of static, because just if you just live in that world and you're like, okay, we can't go outside static, like it starts opening up innovations and seeing opportunities like this that is just impossible or it doesn't make sense in a dynamic world.
Yeah, and I love thinking about those trade-offs too, because I think that there's a lot of sort of motion right now to popularize these sort of request time generated tools. And I think the reasoning for that is that they're better in some like dynamic content use cases, but they're also limiting in a way because you can't do as much, or you don't have as much access to heavier build time things that you want to do. So yeah, I think that the part of the story that's sort of being left out right now is that build can be more powerful than dynamic in some use cases.
Yeah. Hey, there was a time in early Jamstack where a lot of the discussion was like, what's the best tool for this job? And like talking about those trade-offs and things, and I feel like that's just lost now. And it's like what tool can cover the most use cases? But naturally when you do that, it's not going to be, it just can't be as good as a specialized tool for a particular use case.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I love the idea that you can make something specialized that is just has more power than something that tries to be generalized. And I think that that's just an evolution of every industry that I think has ever existed. Like you can see it happen in web development generally too, that we're getting more and more specialized. And there's fewer generalists, and I think our tools should reflect that as well.
Yeah, agreed. Hi, Bob. Bob Mansour just joined. Maybe you guys need to revive those stories showing how powerful static sites can be. 100%. I feel like that's something that needs to be out in the world. It should be the introduction for beginners learning web development. Like start static, learn the fundamentals of how the web works, and then as you need it, add on more. I think it's backwards at the moment, and then we have new developers who don't really understand the foundations of the web.
I mean, static has much safer guardrails too. Like it's just so much harder to break a site in production when your site is breaking in the build and then your build fails. Whereas it's much easier to break a site in production when you're doing on request things, and that's bitten me too.
Breaking it without knowing you've broken it, and then you're dealing with a production server trying to fix it.
Yeah, I mean, you need so much more like monitoring infrastructure as well, and a lot more testing infrastructure up front, and it's just a lot riskier. So of course we're both on board with that, and future of Jamstack, futureofjamstack.org.
Yeah, check it out.
The future of
I feel like that also, like, there's been evolutions with Jamstack, like I forget the acronyms, ISR, incremental static regeneration, and that set of tools where it's kind of static, but the first request is dynamic, and then it caches it. It's a good tool to have, but I feel like the trade-offs aren't talked about enough, where it's like, the way it's talked about is, it's basically static. But to that point earlier, you give up that security of knowing, okay, I've deployed it, I know my site's good, like it's good to go. You've got some dynamic requests that need to happen that may break and may have unexpected results. So it needs to be considered.
Yeah, that's bitten me before too. That specific architecture has bitten me in production before. So 11D had this like authors section of our site that we moved to use similar to ISR architecture model, where it would render on first request and then cache that for repeat requests. And I think that I got rid of that. I got rid of that within the last, I want to say, couple months, just because it was too brittle. It would break sometimes. And I mean, it also took away some of the site's portability as well, because those APIs are vendor specific. And completely tying a section of my site to only be hostable on one provider seemed not good future friendly choice for my architecture. So I just moved all those pages back to static, and haven't had a problem since. But I'd say that probably bit me 3 or 4 times in production, where people would say, oh, this page is breaking.
So what do you think, like the reason that feature came about in the first place was because we have long build times, and it's a way of reducing the build time.
Specific tool chains had long build times. it was very framework specific why those architecture complexities were introduced.
For certain React-based frameworks.
Right. Yes. And so, yeah, you got all of this sort of vendor lock-in and architecture complexity that came from slow build performance that was unique to just a few like static site generators. And so, I don't know. It wasn't, just looking back on it, I don't think it's worth it for that use case.
What about let's say an Eleventy site that has 2 million pages? Like, what's the answer there? Like ISR does, maybe you can get you could get the build time down to 2 seconds if you did ISR on enough pages. Or should the focus be on, we just need faster builds and better incremental?
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting question. I think that the way that I would solve the problem now, looking back on it, is that I would focus more on persisting incremental builds across build runs. So when you run a build, it only changes the things in production that have changed and are related to the data that are doing your builds. I think that cross-build incremental builds is probably a better and more portable solution there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But 2 million pages, that's a lot. That's got me sweating.
Yeah. But it's like that use case for a static site. I mean, it's valid, but it's very edge casey.
Yeah.
Like the 80/20 is probably under, like, I don't know, 1,000 pages. The 99/1 is probably under 100 pages, 1,000 pages.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I did kind of put up a Twitter poll a few years back about what people thought a large site was, just for like benchmarking purposes. And I have some, I think, markdown benchmarks on my blog that I have written about, and I used that poll to sort of inform the size of projects that I built with. And I think if I remember correctly, like most people thought 5,000 pages was a very large site.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess if you're doing AI generated like junk content, then maybe you could get a million.
It's not necessarily something Eleventy needs to optimize or wants to promote, I assume.
I mean, that's like I don't know. Yes, I agree with what you said, but the thing that's sort of awkward about like AI generated stuff and LLMs is that I feel like Jamstack it fits into that exact thing that Jamstack is good at, like very expensive, upfront, build time generated things. It's way better in a Jamstack model. Like, I'm not really on the AI train by any means, but I see how those two things fit together. That you're not going to run an LLM on request. I mean, you can, but you can pay someone else to do it. But in terms of like doing your own LLM generated stuff, I feel like Jamstack is sort of the evolution of, or they just fit so nicely together. If you're going to do a bunch of very expensive upfront computational cost, Jamstack is perfect for that. But I don't think you'll see me on that train anytime soon.
Nice. All right. Well, let's bring the stream to a close. Yeah, thanks for joining everyone today. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, thanks. See ya.